Levi Chapman's fingers drummed against the mahogany conference table, each tap echoing through his corner office like a countdown to my professional execution. The afternoon sun pierced through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting harsh shadows across the financial reports I'd compiled over 3 sleepless nights. Reports that proved his son had systematically destroyed $8.7 million in client portfolios through reckless investment strategies I'd explicitly warned against. "You're being reassigned," he said, not looking up from the documents. His voice carried that particular coldness reserved for people he'd already dismissed from consideration. "Effective immediately, you'll transition from senior portfolio manager to a research analyst position." My hands clenched in my lap, nails digging into palms. 12 years of building Apex Investment Group's most successful portfolio management division, personally managing $340 million in assets, consistently outperforming market benchmarks by double digits. All of it reduced to this sterile conversation in an office that smelled of expensive cologne and entitlement. "On what grounds?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the earthquake happening behind my ribs. Levi finally looked up, his steel-gray eyes devoid of warmth. "You've demonstrated an inability to collaborate with emerging leadership. My son Garrett is implementing innovative strategies, and your resistance to change has become problematic." Innovative strategies. That's what he called ignoring fundamental risk management principles, leveraging client accounts beyond acceptable margins, and chasing speculative tech stocks against every indicator suggesting correction. "The quarterly board presentation is in 5 days," I said carefully. "The shareholders expect a full accounting of portfolio performance." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Which is precisely why we need to present a unified front. Garrett will lead the investment strategy discussion. You'll provide supporting data as needed." Garrett, 29 years old, MBA from a third-tier program his father's donations had elevated, 2 years of actual trading experience, all of it catastrophic. The same Garrett who'd dismissed my warnings about concentrated tech exposure 3 months ago, right before the sector correction that evaporated $4.2 million in a single week. "The clients whose portfolios Garrett manages have lost an average of 23% this quarter," I stated flatly. "My division is up 14%. The numbers don't support this transition." Levi's expression hardened. "Your obsession with conservative strategies is exactly what's holding this firm back. Garrett understands that wealth creation requires bold action. You've become risk-averse to the point of cowardice." Risk-averse. I generated $87 million in gains for our clients over 5 years through careful analysis and disciplined strategy. Meanwhile, Garrett had convinced a retired teacher to invest her entire pension in cryptocurrency derivatives, wiping out her retirement savings in 6 weeks. "What about Mrs. Patterson?" I asked quietly. "She trusted us with 40 years of savings." "Market volatility affects everyone," Levi dismissed with a wave. "Garrett has already moved past that unfortunate incident. You, however, seem determined to weaponize it." Weaponize. As if protecting clients from financial ruin was an attack rather than literally my job. "I need your transition memo by tomorrow morning," Levi continued, standing to signal our meeting's conclusion. "You'll brief Garrett on all active portfolios and surrender administrative access to the portfolio management system by end of week." "And if I refuse?" The temperature in the room dropped. "Your contract includes non-compete clauses that extend 3 years. Violate them and you'll never work in finance again. Not in this city, not anywhere that matters." I stood slowly, gathering the reports he hadn't bothered to read. "I understand perfectly." Walking through Apex Investment Group's glass-walled corridors, I felt the weight of colleagues' stares. News traveled fast in this building. Junior analysts suddenly found their screens fascinating. Portfolio managers who'd sought my advice for years developed urgent phone calls requiring privacy. In my office, I closed the door and pressed my forehead against the cool glass, finally allowing my hands to shake. Beyond the window, Seattle's financial district sprawled below, buildings full of people making decisions that affected lives, livelihoods, futures. My computer screen glowed with open files. 12 years of trading records, risk assessments, client communications, and every override Garrett had initiated against my documented recommendations. The system didn't forget. It couldn't be intimidated or demoted. 5 days until the board presentation. 5 days to decide what kind of person I was going to be. Hey, before we continue this story, I just wanted to thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this corporate drama so far, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Your support means everything and it helps me keep creating content you'll love. Now let's get back to what happened next. My name is Delaney Cross and I never planned to become a whistleblower. Growing up in modest circumstances in Portland, I'd discovered my aptitude for numbers early. While other kids played outside, I analyzed stock tables in newspapers my father brought home, fascinated by patterns that predicted market movements. Finance seemed like magic at first, the way money could multiply through strategic decisions. Then I learned it wasn't magic at all but mathematics, psychology and discipline combined. That realization transformed interest into obsession. When Apex Investment Group offered me a junior analyst position 14 years ago, it felt like destiny. The firm had a sterling reputation, managing portfolios for high-net-worth individuals and institutional clients across the Pacific Northwest. Levi Chapman had built the company from nothing, starting with a single office and 3 employees, growing it into a powerhouse managing $4.8 billion in assets. Back then, Levi respected expertise. We succeed by being smarter and more careful than everyone else, he told me during my interview. Our clients trust us with their futures. That trust is sacred. I believed him. For 10 years I had every reason to. I advanced from analyst to trader to portfolio manager, eventually heading a division managing high-net-worth individuals seeking stable growth. My approach was methodical. Deep research, diversified holdings, strict risk parameters, constant monitoring. It worked spectacularly. My clients' portfolios weathered the 2018 market volatility, the pandemic crash, every correction and crisis. While competitors hemorrhaged assets, my division grew. Clients referred friends and family. My performance bonuses reflected results that spoke for themselves. Then Garrett arrived. Fresh from his MBA program, eager to prove himself, and completely unprepared for the responsibility his father immediately granted him. Levi installed Garrett as Director of Growth Strategies, a newly created position that gave him authority over investment decisions across multiple divisions. Learn from Delaney. Levi had instructed his son at the announcement meeting. Her track record is exactly what we need to inform aggressive expansion. Aggressive expansion. Those words should have warned me. I tried teaching Garrett the fundamentals. Risk assessment frameworks, correlation analysis, position sizing, portfolio rebalancing. He nodded during our sessions, asked intelligent-sounding questions, then made decisions that ignored everything we'd discussed. His first major move was pushing our tech-focused fund into maximum leverage during an obvious market top. Every technical indicator screamed correction. Price-to-earnings ratios had exceeded historical peaks. The volatility index showed dangerous complacency. These companies are revolutionizing entire industries, Garrett had argued in front of the investment committee. Playing it safe means missing generational wealth creation opportunities. I'd presented counter-analysis showing how the same patterns preceded major corrections in 2000 and 2008. Historical data didn't lie. Markets that rose too far too fast always corrected. Levi sided with his son. Fortune favors the bold, Delaney. Maybe you've been in this business too long. 3 weeks later, the correction I'd predicted materialized. The tech sector dropped 18% in 5 trading days. Garrett's highly leveraged positions magnified losses. Clients who trusted us with their savings watched their account values crater. I spent 72 hours on the phone, explaining the situation to angry, frightened people who'd relied on our expertise. Some cried. Others threatened lawsuits. All of them asked the same question. How could professionals have let this happen? Tell them it was unexpected market volatility, Garrett instructed during an emergency meeting. Nobody could have predicted this correction. Except I had. In writing. With detailed analysis. 3 weeks before it happened. We need to be honest with clients, I'd insisted. They deserve to understand what happened and what we're doing to recover. Garrett's smile had been condescending. Honesty doesn't calm panicked investors, Delaney. Confidence does. That was 6 months ago. Since then, Garrett had made increasingly reckless decisions, each time overruling my objections, each time producing worse outcomes. The Mrs. Patterson situation was just the most heartbreaking example. She'd come to us after her husband died, trusting us with the life insurance payout and pension rollover that represented their life's work. Conservative growth, she'd specified. Something safe that would fund her retirement without anxiety. I designed a balanced portfolio. Dividend-paying blue chips, investment-grade bonds, a small allocation to real estate investment trusts. Projected returns of 6 to 8% annually with minimal volatility. Exactly what she needed. Garrett had accessed her account 3 months later and restructured everything into cryptocurrency derivatives and penny stocks. These positions could triple her money in a year, he told me when I discovered the changes. They'd done the opposite. When the cryptocurrency market crashed, Mrs. Patterson's $640,000 became $87,000. Her retirement plans dissolved overnight. She'd sat in my office, hands trembling as she reviewed the statement. "I don't understand," she'd whispered. "You promised this was safe." I'd wanted to scream that I hadn't authorized those trades, that Garrett had acted without consulting me, that this disaster was preventable. But my professional obligation was to the firm, not to throwing colleagues under the bus however much they deserved it. "I'm so sorry," was all I could say, the words utterly inadequate. Now sitting in my office with a demotion letter that felt like a career death sentence, I faced an impossible choice. Accept responsibility for disasters I'd tried to prevent, preserve my ability to work in this industry and watch more clients suffer. Or risk everything to expose the truth. My phone buzzed with a message from Levi. "Need your transition documentation by 8 a.m. Keep it professional and forward-looking." Forward-looking. He wanted me to help Garrett assume control of portfolios I'd spent years building, knowing his incompetence would devastate the people who'd trusted me with their financial futures. I pulled up the portfolio management system and began, not the transition memo Levi expected, but a comprehensive analysis of every trade, every decision, every warning I'd documented. By midnight, I'd created something that would either save Apex Investment Group from itself or end my career in spectacular fashion. The choice was becoming clearer. Sometimes the only way forward is through fire. As dawn broke over Seattle's skyline, I made a final decision. Levi had given me 5 days until the board presentation. 5 days he thought I'd spend preparing to hand over my life's work to his incompetent son. He had no idea those days would become his reckoning instead. The morning of the board presentation arrived with rain hammering against Seattle's glass towers. From my apartment in Capitol Hill, I could see Apex Investment Group's headquarters, 37 floors of steel and ambition where reputations were built on numbers that never lied. I dressed with deliberate care. Black suit, crimson blouse, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Professional, unshakable. The flash drive in my pocket contained 12 years of data that would either reform this company or burn my career to ashes. My phone showed a text from Elena, my senior analyst who'd been with me since she graduated. "Are you really going through with this?" I typed back, "Some things matter more than careers." The board meeting would be held in the executive conference room on the 35th floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Elliott Bay and walls displayed framed articles about Apex's success. As I arrived, I saw expensive vehicles in the executive parking area. German luxury sedans, Italian sports cars, American muscle. The power players had assembled. Inside 19 people filled the room. Old money in conservative suits. New money in designer casual. Institutional investors in business formal. All sharing one commonality. Millions invested with a firm they believed represented financial excellence. Levi stood at the head of the table, Garrett beside him. Garrett wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, his expression confident in the way only the truly unprepared could manage. That confidence wavered when he noticed me. Levi's eyes narrowed. "You're early." "I'm still a portfolio manager until this meeting concludes," I replied, setting my leather briefcase on the table. "Where would you like me to sit?" He gestured toward the far end, away from the presentation area. "The transition announcement has been scheduled after Garrett's strategy presentation. You're here as a courtesy." I nodded and took my seat, not bothering to correct his assumption about my intentions. The room filled with board members greeting each other, discussing market conditions and quarterly projections. Wealthy individuals who viewed Apex as both investment vehicle and status symbol. At exactly 9, Randolph Sawyer called the meeting to order. At 68, Randolph had the weathered presence of someone who'd survived multiple market crashes and learned from each one. He'd been skeptical of Garrett's appointment from the beginning. "Before we begin," Randolph said, "I want to acknowledge our institutional investors joining us today." He nodded toward a woman in the front row. "Cynthia, thank you for making the trip from New York." Cynthia Browning represented the Teachers' Retirement Fund, one of our largest institutional clients with $470 million under management. Her expression was carefully neutral, but I'd heard she'd been asking pointed questions about recent performance. Levi smoothly assumed control. "Our agenda focuses on strategic positioning for the next fiscal year. Garrett has prepared an exciting presentation on our growth trajectory. But first, a personnel announcement." Here it came. I kept my hands steady in my lap. After 12 years of valuable service, Delaney Cross will be transitioning from her current leadership role to support our research division. This change allows Garrett to implement his strategic vision with streamlined execution. Several board members exchanged glances. One, an entrepreneur who'd sold his tech company and invested the proceeds with us, raised his hand. "Why would you reassign your top-performing portfolio manager?" Levi's smile remained fixed. "While we appreciate Delaney's contributions, we've identified philosophical differences regarding risk tolerance that don't align with our growth objectives." "Philosophical differences," Cynthia Browning's voice cut through the room. "Is that what you call a 23% loss in growth portfolios while conservative divisions are up 14%? The temperature shifted. Levi cleared his throat. "Short-term volatility is inherent in aggressive growth strategies. Garrett's approach positions us for exceptional long-term returns." Long-term returns built on what foundation? The question came from an elderly investor who'd been with Apex since its founding. "I've reviewed quarterly reports. The pattern is concerning." "We're conducting normal strategic adjustments," Levi responded. "Any specific concerns should be addressed privately rather than derailing today's agenda." "Actually," Randolph interjected, "as board members responsible for fiduciary oversight, I believe this is precisely the appropriate venue for discussing performance concerns." He turned to me. "Miss Cross, would you care to provide context?" I stood slowly, pulse steady despite the magnitude of what I was about to do. The growth portfolio's underperformance isn't attributable to market conditions. It results from systematic violations of risk management protocols that were overridden despite documented warnings. Every head swiveled toward me. Levi's expression darkened. "This isn't appropriate, Delaney." "On the contrary," Randolph replied, "as someone managing hundreds of millions in client assets, Ms. Cross's perspective seems highly relevant. Please continue." I removed a bound presentation from my briefcase and began distributing copies. "This analysis details every major investment decision made in the past 6 months, the risk parameters that should have been applied, the warnings provided, and the resulting outcomes." Garrett leaned forward, his confidence cracking. "This is completely out of line. My father and I—" "Page 12, I interrupted calmly. "The cryptocurrency derivatives position that eliminated Mrs. Patterson's retirement savings. The trade was executed against explicit client instructions and my documented objection." Cynthia flipped through pages, her expression hardening. "These notes show you specifically warned against this position due to excessive volatility and lack of underlying value." "That recommendation was overruled," I confirmed, as was my objection to the leveraged tech positions taken in March, the concentrated exposure to speculative biotechnology stocks in April, and the margin trading that violated our own risk protocols in May. Murmurs rippled through the room. These people might not be portfolio managers, but they understood risk and what happened when it was mismanaged. "This is absurd," Levi snapped. "Garrett has introduced sophisticated strategies that forward-thinking firms embrace. Delaney represents old guard thinking that limits potential." "Limited potential produced consistent gains," countered the tech entrepreneur. "Sophisticated strategies produce documented losses. I'm confused about which approach serves clients better." Garrett straightened his shoulders. "Every innovation faces resistance from established players invested in maintaining the status quo. My strategies optimize for maximum growth potential." Your strategies optimized a retired teacher's portfolio right into poverty, I replied quietly. Mrs. Patterson's account lost 86% of its value in 3 months because you ignored suitability requirements and basic risk management. The room erupted. Multiple board members spoke at once, demanding explanations, questioning oversight, calculating their own portfolio exposures. That's slander, Levi hissed. You're deliberately misrepresenting complex situations. Page 18 documents the complete trade history, I continued, including the fact that Mrs. Patterson specifically requested conservative, income-focused investments. The derivatives position violated both her written instructions and our fiduciary duty. Randolph's face had gone grave. Levi, is this accurate? Absolutely not. Levi's voice carried practiced authority. These are complex financial matters being deliberately misconstrued. Garrett and I have built a vision for this firm that transcends the limited perspective of risk-averse managers stuck in outdated models. Risk-averse managers. Cynthia's eyebrows rose. Ms. Cross's division outperformed market benchmarks by 8 percentage points this year. That's not risk-averse. That's competent. Her excessive caution costs us opportunities, Garrett protested. Conservative approaches might protect against downside, but they cap upside potential. Our competitors understand this balance. Our competitors aren't being sued by clients who lost their retirement savings, shot back another board member. I received a call from my lawyer last week. 3 lawsuits filed against Apex for unsuitable investment recommendations. All from accounts in your growth portfolio. The tension in the room was palpable. I could see board members mentally calculating implications, not just the immediate losses, but potential litigation, reputation damage, regulatory scrutiny, and the long-term impact on the firm's viability. Randolph cleared his throat. I believe we need a comprehensive review before proceeding with any personnel changes or strategic initiatives. He looked at me. Ms. Cross, what would your recommendations be? I felt Levi's glare burning into me but kept my focus on Randolph. Immediate suspension of all margin trading and leveraged positions. Complete review of every account to ensure holdings match stated investment objectives. Third-party audit of all trades executed in the past year. Full disclosure to affected clients regarding portfolio restructuring. That would trigger massive client panic, Garrett protested. We'd see redemptions that could destabilize the firm. Your trading decisions already destabilized the firm, Cynthia replied coldly. I'm responsible for pension assets that support teachers across 3 states. If similar practices affected our institutional account, I need to know immediately. Levi stood, commanding attention through sheer force of presence. This is becoming unnecessarily adversarial. Ms. Cross has presented her perspective, but the reality is far more nuanced. Perhaps we should adjourn to review these claims privately before making hasty judgments. It was a calculated move. Break the momentum. Separate the board members. Work them individually. I'd seen him deploy this tactic before when facing opposition. Not this time. Before we adjourn, I said, there's something else the board should see. Levi's eyes flashed warning. We've heard quite enough, Delaney. Actually, Randolph said, as chairman, I determine when we've heard enough. Please continue, Ms. Cross. I removed a second report from my briefcase, thinner than the first. This projects the outcome of continuing current trading strategies over the next 4 quarters. As I distributed copies, silence fell over the room. The projections were devastating. Client losses accelerating to $23 million by year-end. Margin calls forcing liquidations at unfavorable prices. Regulatory investigations triggered by pattern complaints. Institutional investors withdrawing assets. The firm's capital cushion eroding below regulatory minimums. A venture capitalist was first to speak. This shows we're on track for insolvency within 18 months if current patterns continue. These are worst-case projections designed to create fear, Levi said smoothly. Ms. Cross's doom and gloom analysis is intended to undermine modernization efforts that threaten her position. These aren't projections, I corrected. They're mathematical certainties based on current positions, margin requirements, and historical volatility patterns. The numbers don't speculate. They calculate. The room had split now. Some board members clearly wanted to believe Levi, to trust the man who'd built Apex from nothing. Others stared at the data with growing alarm, recognizing that numbers didn't lie. Randolph studied both reports, his expression unreadable. I propose we table all personnel changes and strategic initiatives pending an independent audit by external forensic accountants. Unnecessary, Levi replied. We can address these concerns internally. That approach appears to have failed, said the tech entrepreneur. I second Randolph's proposal. All in favor? Randolph asked. Hands rose around the table. Not unanimous but a clear majority. Levi's expression remained composed but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Very well. We'll cooperate with any review which I'm confident will vindicate our strategic direction. And in the meantime, Cynthia added, all major trading decisions require approval from the full investment committee, not just Chapman family approval. Another vote. Another defeat for Levi. As the meeting shifted to procedural matters, Garrett leaned toward his father, whispering urgently. Levi nodded slightly, then glanced at me with calculation that promised retaliation. I understood perfectly. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. During the lunch break, I stepped onto the observation deck on the 36th floor, watching rain sweep across Puget Sound. Behind me, footsteps approached. You've made a catastrophic mistake, Garrett said, stopping beside me. His voice carried an edge of desperation beneath attempted confidence. My father built this firm with his bare hands. You're destroying his legacy. I turned to face him. Your trading decisions are destroying his legacy. I'm trying to save what's left. He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You think you're untouchable because of your track record. But you're about to learn how this business really works. Loyalty matters more than performance. Loyalty to what? I asked. To a firm or to a family name? Because protecting clients should come before protecting egos. My father doesn't forget people who betray him, Garrett said quietly. Neither do I. You'll wish you'd taken the demotion and stayed quiet. Before I could respond, Levi appeared in the doorway. Garrett, we need to talk. Now. As Garrett walked away, he threw back over his shoulder. Watch your back, Delaney. This isn't over. I watched them huddle in intense conversation, occasionally glancing my way. Whatever they were planning, I needed to be prepared. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly they'd move, or that their retaliation would provide exactly the opening I needed to implement the final phase of my plan. I returned to my office that afternoon to find my computer access suspended. My assistant Amy stood outside my door, face pale. Security came by 20 minutes ago, she said quietly. They said you're under investigation for unauthorized access to confidential client files. Of course. Classic Levi. When threatened, counterattack. Frame me as the wrongdoer to undermine my credibility with the board. The client files are literally my job responsibility, I said, keeping my voice level. I know. Amy glanced around nervously. But they're saying you accessed accounts outside your division. Garrett called an emergency staff meeting. He said you've been manipulating data to make him look bad. Perfect. They were moving even faster than I'd anticipated. Did they lock my office? Amy nodded. Everything's being preserved for investigation. I'm supposed to inventory your files. I touched her shoulder. Then you'd better do exactly that. Document everything by the book. Back at my apartment, I found Elena waiting in the lobby, laptop bag over her shoulder. They've frozen your system access and started telling everyone you falsified performance reports, she said, following me inside. Levi's spinning this as you being a disgruntled employee manufacturing evidence. I poured us both coffee, hands steady despite the fury building behind my ribs. Did they check the backup files? Elena's eyes widened slightly. What backup files? I allowed myself a small smile. Exactly. That evening my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Underground parking. Level B3. Come alone if you want to save your career. Garrett, offering what he thought was leverage. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. Whatever game they were playing, I needed to understand all the moves. The parking garage beneath Apex headquarters was nearly empty at 8 p.m. My footsteps echoed off concrete as I descended to the lowest level. Garrett waited beside his silver Porsche, a manila envelope clutched in his hands. He'd been drinking. I could smell whiskey from 10 feet away. Smart of you to come, he said, words slightly slurred. Dad wanted to just fire you tomorrow and release everything to the press. But I convinced him to offer an alternative. How generous of you. He thrust the envelope toward me. Resignation letter. Sign it. Cite personal reasons. Dad will provide a neutral reference and 6 months severance. I didn't touch the envelope. And if I refuse? Then we release evidence showing you manipulated performance data to hide your own trading errors. We've got documentation showing you falsified reports to cover losses in your division. That's quite an accusation. He stepped closer, alcohol giving him false courage. We both know this industry runs on reputation. One hint of fraudulent reporting and you'll never work in finance again. Not at any reputable firm. Is that why you called me here? To threaten me with fabricated allegations. To give you a way out, he said, attempting sincerity. You're talented, Delaney. Really. But you don't understand how business works at this level. Success requires flexibility. Relationships matter more than rigid adherence to rules that limit opportunity. Relationships, I repeated. Is that what you call risking client money to prove you're as capable as your father? His face flushed. Don't pretend this is about clients. You're angry because Dad chose me over you. This is wounded pride disguised as professional concern. Sign by morning, he continued, tapping the envelope. Or we release everything. Your call. After he left, I stood alone in the fluorescent-lit garage, listening to the hum of ventilation systems and distant traffic. I opened the envelope. The resignation letter was dated 2 weeks ago, before the board meeting, before I'd distributed my analysis. They'd planned this narrative perfectly. I'd resigned before making false accusations against the Chapman family out of bitterness about my demotion. Morning brought chaos. My phone exploded with messages from industry contacts who'd heard rumors about my suspension. By noon, financial blogs were reporting that Apex's senior portfolio manager was under investigation for data manipulation. By 3 p.m., security arrived at my apartment with a cease and desist letter. 24 hours to return all company property. Any communication with current clients would be considered contract violation. As I packed my belongings from my office the next day, Randolph Sawyer appeared at my door. This seems precipitous, he observed, watching the security guard hovering nearby. Levi claims they found evidence you altered client reports. Convenient timing, I replied. Very. Randolph studied me carefully. The forensic auditors begin their review Monday. Levi insists they use Garrett's files rather than your division's records. Of course he does. Miss Cross. Randolph lowered his voice. Several board members were convinced by your presentation. If there's anything else we should know before the audit begins, anything that might be difficult to access through official channels. I closed the box I was packing carefully. The financial data speaks for itself, Mr. Sawyer. Just ensure the auditors see the original transaction records, not whatever version Levi provides them. He nodded thoughtfully. Good luck, Miss Cross. I suspect we'll speak again soon. 4 days of limbo followed. I rented a small office space in Fremont, fielded concerned calls from former colleagues and waited. Industry forums buzzed with speculation about my departure. Rumors about problems with Apex's flagship portfolios. On day 5 my phone rang. Cynthia Browning's assistant, requesting an urgent meeting. The next morning I found myself in a conference room at a downtown law office, facing not just Cynthia, but 7 other major Apex investors. We've been denied access to complete trading records, Cynthia explained without preamble. The auditors report that older files are mysteriously corrupted. Levi claims a server migration last month caused data loss. Added a real estate developer who'd invested substantial family wealth with Apex. Very convenient data loss affecting exactly the period in question. Very convenient, I agreed neutrally. Ms. Cross, Cynthia continued, we represent $1.8 billion in assets under management with Apex. We're prepared to demand complete transparency, including your reinstatement. But first, we need certainty that your claims are independently verifiable. And if Levi has already altered the data, the developer said quietly, that constitutes securities fraud. A federal crime. I considered them carefully. These were serious people asking me to cross a line from which there was no return. What exactly are you asking? Evidence, Cynthia said simply. If what you presented at the board meeting is accurate, prove it independently of whatever Levi might have tampered with. I pulled out my laptop and opened a file structure they couldn't see from their angle. As it happens, I can do exactly that. 3 weeks later, the Apex Investment Group Board of Directors convened an emergency session. I wasn't invited, but Randolph kept me updated via text. Levi presenting vindication. Garrett showing revised performance analyses. Auditors expressing frustration with data availability. Then my phone buzzed. Your turn. At precisely 2 p.m., Cynthia Browning requested the floor and introduced her independent financial analyst to present findings on Apex portfolios. The analyst was Dr. Walter Greenfield, former SEC investigator and forensic accountant whose testimony had brought down 2 major investment banks during the financial crisis. His presentation was devastating. Complete analysis of 247 Apex client accounts, showing exactly the problems I'd identified. Transaction records pulled directly from clearinghouse archives, analyzed by 3 independent firms, showing patterns of unsuitable recommendations, excessive trading and systematic violations of risk protocols. Irrefutable evidence. As Levi and Garrett tried to challenge the findings, Cynthia played the audio recording I'd made of Garrett's parking garage threat. His admission that they'd fabricated evidence to frame me. His confession that client losses were being covered up. By 6 p.m., the board had voted to suspend both Chapmans pending a full regulatory investigation. By 8 p.m., my phone rang with an offer to return as chief investment officer with expanded authority and compensation that reflected the risk I'd taken. But the real satisfaction came 1 week later when I walked into my restored office to find Elena grinning beside a familiar server rack. "Remember how you always insisted on off-site backup of all trading records?" she asked. "The redundant system that automatically archived every transaction," I confirmed. He handed me a hard drive. "Every deletion Levi and Garrett made to the company files after locking you out. Timestamps showing exactly when they tried covering their tracks. The backup system they didn't know existed. Perfect." The legal consequences unfolded gradually. The SEC investigation uncovered years of unsuitable investment recommendations. Lawsuits from clients multiplied. The financial penalties would be staggering. 1 month after my return, I found Garrett waiting by my car after work. He'd lost weight, the expensive suits replaced by jeans and a wrinkled button-down. "You won," he said simply. "My father's reputation is destroyed. Everything he built is collapsing. The SEC is threatening criminal charges." This wasn't about winning, Garrett. Then what was it about? Revenge. I thought about Mrs. Patterson, about the 3 other retirees whose savings had evaporated, about the institutional clients whose pension obligations were jeopardized by reckless trading. "Accountability," I answered, "for decisions that affected real people's lives." He looked away. "I'm probably going to prison. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. My attorney says I'm looking at 10 years minimum." "You made choices," I said quietly. "Choices that destroyed people's financial security. Now face the consequences with whatever dignity you can manage." As he walked away, shoulders slumped, I felt no triumph. Only the quiet satisfaction of knowing the truth had prevailed. 8 months later, Apex Investment Group operates under new management. Our portfolio strategies adhere to the strictest fiduciary standards in the industry. Client accounts have recovered most of their losses through disciplined, ethical investing. Levi accepted a plea agreement. Massive fines, industry banishment, 5 years probation. Garrett cooperated with prosecutors and received a reduced sentence of 4 years in federal prison. Both have vanished from the financial world, their names now cautionary tales in compliance training seminars. As for me, I still arrive at the office before dawn, watching Seattle wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. The city looks different now, not because the skyline has changed but because I have. I learned that integrity isn't just about following rules. It's about having the courage to stand alone when everyone else is looking away. Mrs. Patterson visits occasionally. We recovered 60% of her losses through legal settlements, enough to fund a modest retirement. She brings homemade cookies and photos of her grandchildren. You gave me back my dignity, she told me last month. That matters more than the money. The reforms we've implemented at Apex have become industry models. Mandatory dual approval for high-risk trades. Real-time monitoring of portfolio drift from stated objectives. Quarterly reviews where clients can question any decision affecting their accounts. Transparent fee structures with no hidden compensation for pushing particular products. Our assets under management have actually grown, not despite these protections but because of them. Turns out that in an industry rife with conflicts of interest and opacity, radical transparency is a competitive advantage. Elena was promoted to senior portfolio manager, heading the division I used to run. She's even more cautious than I was, which makes me proud. You taught me that boring is beautiful, she said during her promotion dinner. Consistent returns beat spectacular crashes every single time. Amy, my former assistant, now works as our compliance officer. Her meticulous attention to detail, the same quality that made her excellent at organizing my schedule, now protects our clients from the kind of misconduct that nearly destroyed this firm. The financial press wrote extensively about the Apex scandal. Most articles focused on the dramatic aspects: the father-son corruption, the whistleblower confrontation, the regulatory takedown. Few understood the real story. This wasn't about heroes and villains. It was about a system that incentivizes short-term gains over long-term stability, that confuses activity with accomplishment, that mistakes confidence for competence. Levi and Garrett were symptoms, not the disease itself. The disease is believing that rules don't apply to people with enough money or connections. That expertise is less valuable than relationships. That the ends justify the means as long as nobody gets caught. I gave a speech at a financial services conference 6 months ago. The job isn't to maximize returns, I told an audience of portfolio managers. It's to help clients achieve their life goals using their money as a tool. Sometimes that means saying no to opportunities that don't fit their situation. Sometimes it means accepting lower returns in exchange for stability. Always it means remembering that the numbers on our screens represent real lives. The applause was polite but scattered. Many in that audience still believe the old model works, that aggressive salesmanship and bold risk-taking are signs of sophistication. They'll learn eventually, probably the hard way. But some understood immediately. I received dozens of emails afterward from analysts and managers who'd faced similar ethical dilemmas, who'd been told to prioritize firm profits over client interests, who'd been punished for raising concerns about unsuitable recommendations. You gave me the courage to speak up, wrote a junior analyst from Boston. My manager was pushing elderly clients into variable annuities with huge commissions. I documented everything and went to compliance. They're investigating now. I might lose my job, but I'll be able to sleep at night. That's the real impact. Not the regulatory fines or the criminal convictions, but the cultural shift happening one conversation at a time. Every person who chooses to document concerns rather than stay silent. Every manager who supports employees raising red flags rather than punishing them. Every firm that decides reputation matters more than quarterly bonuses. Change is slow and incomplete. But it's happening. I think about that morning in Levi's office often, when he demoted me for refusing to cover up his son's incompetence. How small I felt in that moment. How certain I was that speaking truth to power would end my career. I was right about the personal cost. My reputation took years to rebuild. Some people still believe I was a disgruntled employee who manipulated data for revenge. The financial industry has a long memory for controversy and a short memory for context. But I was wrong about the impossibility of challenging entrenched power. Wrong about being alone. Wrong about truth being insufficient against well-funded deception. The shareholders saw my records not because I was particularly clever, but because numbers don't lie. The data was always there, waiting for someone with both access and courage to present it. I just happened to be in the right position at the right moment, angry enough to take the risk. Could I have done things differently? Absolutely. I could have documented concerns and then quietly found another job, letting someone else deal with the inevitable collapse. Many people advised exactly that approach. You can't change the system from inside, they warned. You'll just get crushed. They weren't entirely wrong. The system nearly did crush me. There were nights I lay awake calculating mortgage payments and job prospects, wondering if righteous indignation was worth professional suicide. But then I'd remember Mrs. Patterson's face when she learned her retirement was gone. The tremor in her hands as she asked how this could happen. The assumption that professionals she trusted had her best interests at heart. That assumption was sacred. Breaking it wasn't just unethical, it was a betrayal of everything this profession should represent. So I made my choice, accepted the consequences, and discovered that I was stronger than I'd believed. That truth, when backed by unassailable evidence, has power that even wealth and connections can't overcome indefinitely. The board members who supported me weren't heroes either. They were investors protecting their capital. Cynthia Browning didn't champion my reinstatement out of moral conviction. She did it because the teacher's retirement fund would have faced catastrophic losses if Apex continued down its current path. Randolph Sawyer didn't question Levi's leadership because he cared about my career. He did it because the firm's survival required accountability. Their motivations were self-interested, pragmatic, financial. But pragmatism aligned with ethics produces the same outcome as pure idealism. Sometimes good things happen for selfish reasons. That's okay. I've learned to accept that most victories are messy, incomplete, and morally ambiguous. Garrett is in prison, but he'll be released eventually. Levi lost his firm but kept most of his personal wealth. The clients who suffered losses received partial compensation, not full restitution. Justice isn't clean or complete. It's whatever progress we can wrestle from systems designed to protect the powerful. But progress is real. The reforms we implemented have prevented countless cases of client harm. The employees who saw me survive retaliation know it's possible to challenge unethical practices without automatic career destruction. The industry coverage of our scandal made other firms reevaluate their own practices, worried about becoming the next cautionary tale. That's not nothing. It's not everything, but it's not nothing. Some days I walk through our trading floor and watch analysts checking risk parameters, portfolio managers explaining recommendations to clients, compliance officers reviewing unusual trades. The mundane work of ethical finance happening quietly without drama or headlines. This is what victory looks like in practice. Boring competence, transparent processes, accountability measures that prevent small problems from becoming catastrophic failures. Not as exciting as the confrontation in the boardroom, but infinitely more valuable. I keep a photo on my desk from Mrs. Patterson's 74th birthday party. She's smiling, surrounded by grandchildren holding a cake shaped like a piggy bank. Thanks for giving me back my future. The card reads, on difficult days when I'm drowning in compliance paperwork or explaining why we can't pursue some lucrative but questionable strategy, I look at that photo. It reminds me why boring matters. Why rules exist. Why saying no is sometimes the most important part of our job. The financial industry hasn't fundamentally changed. The incentives that created the Apex situation still exist throughout the sector. Firms still prioritize growth over stability. Managers still face pressure to generate short-term results regardless of long-term risks. Sales cultures still reward aggressive product pushing over genuine financial planning. But within our small corner of this industry, we've built something different. A firm where client interests genuinely come first. Where employees can raise concerns without fear of retaliation. Where success is measured not by assets under management or revenue growth, but by the percentage of clients achieving their stated financial goals. It's a radical idea, really. Doing exactly what we claim to do. Aligning our interests with our clients' interests. Measuring success by their outcomes rather than our income. Revolutionary through simple honesty. Last week, a young portfolio manager came to my office with concerns about trades another division was executing. Complicated derivative strategies that generated impressive returns on paper but carried risks he didn't think clients fully understood. I documented everything, he said, handing me a detailed analysis. But I'm worried about causing problems. The other manager has been here longer than I have. He has relationships with senior leadership. I read his analysis carefully. He was right. The strategies weren't illegal or even necessarily inappropriate, but the risk disclosures provided to clients were inadequate. People were being sold solutions they didn't fully comprehend. This is excellent work, I told him. I'll take it to the investment committee today. Will there be retaliation? He asked quietly. Against you or against me? I smiled. There might be resistance. People don't like being told their creative strategies need better disclosure. But retaliation? No. That's not how we operate anymore. His relief was visible. Thank you. I kept thinking about what happened with Garrett Chapman. How things went wrong because people stayed silent. You did exactly the right thing, I assured him. This is how we prevent small issues from becoming big scandals. By catching them early and fixing them while we can. After he left, I reflected on how far we'd come. 3 years ago, raising such concerns meant career suicide. Now it's not just accepted, it's expected. The culture has shifted, not completely but meaningfully. That shift didn't happen through dramatic confrontation. It happened through steady, consistent modeling of the behavior we wanted to normalize. Every time someone raised a concern and was thanked rather than punished. Every time we chose transparency over convenient opacity. Every time we prioritized client welfare over short-term profits. Culture change is boring. It's repetitive. It requires saying the same things over and over until they stop feeling revolutionary and start feeling obvious. But it works. I'm not naive enough to think we've solved everything. Human nature doesn't change. The temptations that corrupted Levi and Garrett still exist. The pressure to cut corners, to prioritize relationships over principles, to confuse activity with achievement. Every day brings new choices about who we want to be as individuals and as an organization. The difference now is that choosing integrity isn't automatically punished. It's supported, rewarded, modeled from the top down. That's what I fought for in that boardroom. Not punishment for the Chapmans, though that came. Not vindication for myself, though that mattered. But the possibility of creating a space where doing the right thing wasn't exceptional, it was expected. Where protecting clients wasn't brave, it was baseline. We're not there yet. Maybe we never fully will be. But we're closer than we were, and that progress was worth every sleepless night, every moment of fear, every threat to my career. Because at the end of the day, this job isn't about me. It's about the Mrs. Pattersons of the world who trust us with their futures. Who believe that professionals will honor that trust rather than exploit it. That belief is precious. Fragile. Easily destroyed and painfully rebuilt. My job, our job, is to prove that trust isn't misplaced. That expertise comes with responsibility. That we understand the weight of managing other people's dreams. Some days I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken Garrett's resignation offer. Signed the letter, accepted the severance, moved quietly to another firm. Maybe I'd be managing portfolios somewhere else by now, building wealth and reputation without the controversy. But I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. I wouldn't be able to return Mrs. Patterson's phone calls. I wouldn't be able to advise young analysts to stand up for what's right while having done the opposite myself. We become who we are through the choices we make when no one's watching, when the easy path is also the wrong one, when integrity costs more than we want to pay. I made my choice. I paid the price. And I discovered that the person I became through that struggle was someone I could actually respect. That's worth more than any promotion, any bonus, any prestigious position at a corrupt firm. I started this journey as a senior portfolio manager who loved numbers and pattern recognition. I ended it as someone who understands that finance is ultimately about people, trust, and the responsibility we bear when others give us power over their financial lives. The numbers still matter. The analysis still matters. But they're tools in service of something larger, helping people achieve security, dignity, and peace of mind about their financial futures. That's the job. Not maximizing returns or generating fees or impressing colleagues with sophisticated strategies. Protecting people who trust us. Full stop. Everything else is commentary. Thank you so much for staying with this story until the end. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate justice and standing up for what's right, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Drop a comment letting me know what you thought about Delaney's decision. Would you have had the courage to risk everything for the truth? What would you have done differently? Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who might need to hear them, who might be facing their own difficult choices about integrity versus career security. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying those who wronged you. It's about building something better from the ashes of their corruption. It's about proving that doing the right thing even when it's terrifying is possible. And it's about leaving the world a little bit better than you found it, one difficult choice at a time.